Go right ahead, Hirsch.
Got it. Okay. So I have this is a we're I'm doing really good for my start here, aren't I? We are going to be discussing and looking at the West Kingdom History site and how to use the site and how to actually contribute to the site. I'm going to start off with some real basic stuff, just looking at some things. Most people who use the site are probably familiar or at least somewhat familiar with the who's who, and a lot of people, that's all they really use. So I want to be able to kind of show you that there's a lot more depth to this site. So I'm just going to jump right in, but before I do, I want to thank Sarah because she's the one who organizes these classes and does all the advertising and does all of that, and it's really helpful. So there we go. So I'm going to go into share screen. This time I mean it. I'm going to go there. Okay, so I'm sharing the whole screen simply because I'm going to be back and forthing between various windows. And it's just easier than because if the way that Zoom works, if you share a window, then if you want to share a different window, you have to unshare and then reshare and so on. So this is just going to make it easier. So this is what the history site looks like if you just come straight to the West Kingdom history site. If it doesn't look like this, if it looks kind of unfinished, there's a link problem and you're using Chrome or you're using Microsoft Edge. And it's a weirdness that if the link doesn't have the HTTP colon slash slash part of a standard web address, that Chrome and Edge add HTTPS, which is a secure version, and then it won't run the code that actually does a lot of what's going on the site. So it should look like this when you come into the site. I'm trying to work with the Kingdom people to fix the other issue, but we'll deal with that. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the front page because there's actually quite a bit going on here. So at the very top, underneath the logos and all of that stuff, there's a small menu. And if all you want to do is go to the who's who, there's actually a link directly to the who's who from here. There's a disclaimer, there's a help window, which is actually designed and aimed at people who want to contribute. So you don't need to frantically scribble notes or anything. There's actually a lot of detail in the help. There's ways to contact us or me actually, but anyway, and there's some stuff about the site and so on. Over here, there's some stuff. I'm going to go into the login stuff later, but this is where if you want to log in, you can actually do it from here. Okay. Now down here, we have the real big menu, which has all the places that you can go to on this site. And on the right side of the screen, you will see the calendar. And this is something I think is really handy for a lot of people, is it tells you, amongst other things, what the current year is. And that's based on whatever the current date is. So on May 1st, that's going to change to 59. Okay. And it's just automatic. You don't have to do anything. It automatically, every time you come in here, it shows you the current date. And for heralds and so on, that can be really useful for court. So anyway, but underneath that, there's a calendar of SCA years and events. And this is where there can be quite a bit of information about an event. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to this year, which is down towards the bottom. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to show you really briefly Coronet, which just happened a couple weeks ago. This is Miss Coronet. And when I bring that up, if you scroll down, there's photos down here, but there's the page copy. I always put the page copy in, although I do tend to trim it so street addresses are omitted, that kind of thing. I take out email addresses, although these days it's not as big of a deal since the page is being published with all of that information in there. But anyway, it is possible to come down here and add a reminiscence if you are logged in. You can actually talk about the event. You can review the event. You can upload photos. Since I'm not currently logged in, it's not showing that, but you can actually upload photos. And the photos will do this kind of thing. Okay.
Where's the best
Ah,
candy?
okay.
I didn't pay for that.
So But the nice thing is you can scroll back and forth between photos, all the usual stuff that you find in most photo galleries, um, and all of that. Um, if you are looking at a photo, you notice that on this photo there's several question marks. That's because I don't know who these people are, and the photographer didn't know who these people are. You can actually send an email to me and tell me who some of those people are that are missing, or if I actually missed, or if somebody is mistagged. But you can click on that and you can fill in information and then fill in all of that stuff. And the nice thing is it also passes along the file name, and we'll come back to file names later, but anyway, but it passes along the file name. It tells me what the event is. It does all of that stuff, all in the background. So and you will get a copy of the email so you can see it. I'm going to close that. So anyway, but the idea is that there's all of this stuff, and this one has quite a few photos because we had several people contributing photos. There can also sometimes be attachments or files or web links. This is mostly here because in the early days of the SCA, there were event flyers and things like that. And so when I have the event flyer, I will actually attach it to the event, and it will all be in one place. Okay, so that's just kind of a quick overview of that. And I'm now going to go back to here, and then I can go back to the main page, and there we are. Now, I just want to talk about some of the other stuff that's in here because, again, like I state, not everybody uses or knows about or takes the time to look at a lot of the other stuff. And I'm not going to go into everything. I just want to kind of give you a better feel. So the who's who actually breaks down into 3 different sections, and the part most people look at is this, which allows you to hunt down somebody. And let's say I look for Sarah, and I then go search, okay? And there I will find everybody, and you will see there's some names are listed here. These are cross references. These are names that somebody might have gotten an award under a different spelling of a name, that kind of thing. So, but if I click on Sarah's link here, okay, her arms should show up any time now. There we go. Okay, and the idea is you can hold the mouse over the arms and you can actually get a bigger image. That's really useful for the scribes. You can hold a mouse over individual photos and all of that. And you get the top 10 awards that somebody has from the awards list. That's all cross-linked, and we don't need to go into all the details there. Website blogs. Sarah has an SCA resume, so you could actually go out and look at that. Any arts and sciences projects, event staff, events that she has, in this case, event stewarded, jobs that she's held, and again, photos. Okay. Now, the nice thing is the way that the photos work is when you upload photos for an event, you can tag the people in the photo and they will automatically show up on the who's who. You don't have to do anything else for them to show up there. So it's a really nice feature of the site. I'm rather proud of it since I wrote it, but I'm not trying to brag too much, but I am rather proud of that. So anyway, so there's the who's who. Okay. Now let me just double check. Yeah, so I'm going to close that window there. Now, there's households and fighting units and groups and so on, and you can search this. So you can state, I want names that start with the letter M and do a search on just the households that start with the letter M. You can then come into Markheim and look at Markheim. If Markheim has a badge that's associated with House Markheim, which we have this one, and so on. And if there's any other information, I found some information in the Caid wiki because that's where the household started, was in Caid, and so on. So there's a ton of stuff that can be put in here. And again, I can put links. I can put links to how to, if your household has its own website, that kind of thing. You can also search for a partial name. So if I do smile, I think it starts with that, SMI, you get Smiling Eyes Combat and Social Club right there. There's not a whole lot of information on that one, but they do have some awards, so that's kind of fun. Okay, And so that's the household stuff. And for students of peers, this is useful for the peers themselves, but it's also useful for other people, is that you can look at everybody that we know about or that the history site knows about who's apprenticed. So Asa Torvald's daughter is apprenticed to two different people. Okay. And Abrahe, who I'm probably mispronouncing that name horribly, is apprenticed to Gwendolyn the Silent. And there are links to their Who's Who pages. So if I were to click on that, it would take me to Gwendolyn's page. Okay. And if I scroll down in here, you will find that under personal relationships, there's the apprenticeship for Abrahe right there. Okay. So the idea is everything is cross-linked as much as I can make it. So there's that. So that's just the stuff on the Who's Who part of it. And for a long time, this was collapsed by default, but then people weren't looking at the other options. And so I left that. I defaulted to being open. You can close it if you're doing stuff. Okay. The in memoriam, I think some people have seen the in memoriam. It's a place where people can, again, they can write things as reminiscences of people who have passed. And so that's a useful thing for a lot of people. One thing a lot of people don't know about is this one. And this one's kind of fun. You can do an event search, and you can do things like looking at an event title. That can get a little crazy because if you look for Beltane, you're going to get a massive list of events. But if you come into here and you look for, say, Freeze, which was a March crown, those Freeze in the trees, if you do that, you will find there's actually a few events listed here that have the word freeze anywhere in the description of the event. But this would have been the March crown right there. Okay. And this one was called Freeze in the Trees because it snowed up in the Sierras. Okay. And we were dealing with that. We had a tourney that day and the whole bit. So anyway, but the search thing is really handy because for people who are looking for specific information, like events that were held in a specific city or whatever, you can actually do that. So I can look for AK, which is usually how Alaska is listed for the state, and any event that's showing as up as, let's say, Alaska. Try that. It should be more than that. I don't know why that's not working. I'll have to
look. You still have freeze in the event description.
Oh, that would make a big difference, wouldn't it? Yeah. Let me try that. Well, there's only two that show Alaska, but if I do AK and I do a search, that's going to take it a moment. Yep, there we go. Look at all that. Okay, but that includes everything and that's listed as being in Alaska. So, but again, it can be very useful depending on what you're looking for. Okay, so I'll just clear the search options. Okay, branches. Now this one, again, I've had to point out to people that this exists. This has a whole bunch of information. For the kingdom, it has the arms of the crown, the arms of the consort, but there's also any badges registered to the kingdom. And I had one of my helpers redo a bunch of the armory and so on, so that it's mostly based off of vector graphics. It's not actually vector graphics, but it starts out there and then it gets converted. But anyway, but the idea is that these images can resize very easily and they don't pixelate, which is kind of nice. So, but that's just for the West Kingdom. If I come down to the Principality, there's all this stuff on the Principality, but there's also stuff on the history of the Principality of the Mists. Okay. And then there's stuff from the page, and there's, the history of the Principality of the Mists, which I know Sarah and Chris are both real familiar with, Christopher are well familiar with. It had some interesting beginnings. And so there's quite a bit of a text in here just to deal with all of that. Okay. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. There were a lot of letters in the page about it. So letter to the editor. Then there's the badges that are registered to the Principality. Then you can come down and you can get a listing of the royalty for the Mists. Okay. And it starts at the very beginning with the first warlord, which is actually 3 different people, with one lady of the Mists, and then the second warlord, who is Christopher, and then we come down to the first prince. Okay. And we go from there. Okay. And there's some notes on a few of them just because it's helpful to explain a few things. Okay. So I can then collapse that. And there's events, and again, events for the Mists are going to be a little longer than for some groups and so on. And then there's any other information. So I have the original history that started all of this, um, which is Wilhelm von Schlussel's history, and I pulled out just the section on the principality. And so there's actually a PDF of that. You can look at that. This is something that Sarah was doing when she was princess, and she did part one, and hopefully someday she'll get around to part two. But the idea was that she was actually interviewing people who were there and were working and getting information. And so it was kind of a fun video there. Okay, so let me go all the way back up. And one thing I always forget is you can always scroll back up from there. So there's that. Anyway, but you can find a lot of information, and all of the local groups have also got whatever information I've got. Okay, so if I come into Darkwood, for example, Darkwood shows you that it's in the Principality of the Mists, and it should be showing. Oh, there's a list of branches that are part of Darkwood down here. I may want to move that, but anyway, but it shows the modern location, the title for the herald for the barony for those people who are interested, and again, whatever else there may be. Okay, Darkwood only has the arms registered; they don't have any badges registered, so there's nothing else listed for armory. But you can see the history. You can look at the royalty listing, which would be the barons and baronesses, and so on. And every one of the branches has that kind of information, including branches that are no longer active. Okay, and so if we want to find out about St. Bridget, you can find out that that was the original University of California, Berkeley, okay, which is now St. Catherine. Okay, so interesting things like that. So anyway, there's a whole lot of detail on the branches. And the part that I think I'm really pushing people to do more with is here, is the arts and sciences part of the page. So arts and sciences breaks down into three categories. We have scribal, bardic, and then arts and sciences. And basically arts and sciences projects covers anything that doesn't fall into bardic and scribal. And the reason for that is that bardic has its own set of keywords, and scribal has its own set of keywords and has a different way of handling the artists. So I'm just going to do a quick look under the first one here, which will take it a moment. Okay, now this is everything, okay? And it's taking the first name for these individual items that it finds and putting it out there. Then it's also, you'll see the same things, the Golden Stag players, the Alexandrian tapestries. You're seeing everybody that was involved in that particular play is showing up in here, okay? So that makes this list a little on the long side. You can actually filter the information if you wanted to go to performing arts. You could then narrow it down to just performances and filter it, and you would see this kind of thing. And then you can go off and look at more detail. Okay, shows you the names of all the artists that were involved in that particular project. There's all this description about it. These are things that are actually on the Golden Stag Players website for each of these performances. Photos from the performance if we have them. Other links including videos, scripts, programs, all kinds of stuff. So a lot can depend on just what you want to do for your arts and sciences project. Okay, we can look at, let's say, I'm doing good here, award tokens, and you can come into here, and then you can come down, and again, you can see award tokens that have been created. This is the original Sinagwan winged harp, for example, which I did. And there's only one photo of it in here, but you've got the photos, some description. It actually is kind of an optical illusion, which is why I wanted to explain that. That's actually inset, not raised. But anyway, and so on. So there's all kinds of stuff, and this just, you can narrow the search down. Again, you can go to a specific artist. You can, if you don't remember how to spell somebody's name, you can look at just people whose names start with the letter E, you know, that kind of thing. And so it gives you a lot of options for looking at stuff. You don't have to have photos. You'll see Elsie's items here don't have photos in here. But if you click on it, you'll also see that there's a link to her own photo gallery. Okay, so again, you can do a lot with these. So Bardic. Bardic looks a little bit different because it uses keywords for different types of pieces. Not everybody actually tags their items with keywords, but if they do, you can look at just folk songs, for example, and you will find quite a few folk songs in here. And you will find that in some cases, there's a PDF. There's actually at least a couple of items in here that maybe not in here, but yeah, there's at least one that had the notes. That means that there's at least one MP3 file. So you can come in here and see the lyrics, and then you can click on that. Wow. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but anyway. But that's the idea, is that, you know, it's set up to give you, again, the option to do a lot of different things. And with the Bardic, I wanted to have the option to be able to play MP3s if they exist, so that people who want to know how the song sounds, and all of that. So, and again, you can search on this. I was actually curious one day, and I wanted to find out if there were songs that were specifically about Alden and Constantina, and I typed in Alden, and there's 21 pieces that are about Alden, or Alden's name is somewhere involved in these. Okay, sometimes it's maybe, you know, during the reign of Alden or something, but still. And this searches in title, it searches in the actual body of the Bardic piece, and there's actually some notes that you can look at and so on. So it searches in everything. So it's just kind of a useful tool there. Now, Bardic and then Scribble. So Scribble, again, there's a lot of stuff under Scribble. You can actually search for specific calligraphy styles. So if you wanted to look for only scrolls that do insular minuscule for the calligraphy, you can set a filter on that. And there's only 7 projects that have been tagged that way. There may be more that.
You're just going, or you're just getting back? Okay. I was about to freak.
Okay. And then there's keywords for illumination and so on. You can look for specific things like ash leaf scrolls. I clear the filter just to, yeah, so do ash leaf scroll and then set filter. And there's 20 ash leaf scrolls that have been done that we actually have photos of. I know there are probably more. These are the ones we have photos of. And some of these are real recent, like this one here, okay? And so on. So you can look, and again, you can look for specific artists. You can look for any of these and find, you know, Master of Arms. I don't think there's a whole lot of those. Not 0. Ha, there we go. Okay. Knights. And you'll find that there's 29 of those. And the nice thing, again, is that you can do as many photos as you need to for a scroll. Some people do more photos. They do close-up photos. Tatiana here is really good about coming in, and what she does is she gives you how she did it. And she gives you a huge amount of detail in here, okay? So if you go from one to the next, and there are things like, oh my God, I made this horrible mistake. Okay, color me red. Then she says, ugh. Okay, that you can get a pretty good idea that that's one where she made a mistake of some sort. So she says she managed to get the lettering and the helm painted, and then she used green and so on. Okay, that doesn't actually look like there was a mistake there. Okay, but sometimes she will actually talk about a mistake. Oh, there she says, gilding and fixing a compositional error. So she will actually talk about how she made, what mistakes she made, and then how she fixed it. And that's really useful for other scribes to look at. Okay, so there, again, it's as much information as you are willing to put out there. Okay, as somebody who might want to contribute things. Okay, so now other things, SCA structure gives you officer lists and officer details. So if you want to see everybody who has been an arts and sciences officer that we have on record in the kingdom, okay, we start off at the kingdom level, and we come down to deputy for ANS tournament, deputy arts and sciences minister, media, and we come down to principality, on tier when they were a principality, and so on. Okay, so the idea is, again, putting this information in automatically links it to your Who's Who page. Okay, Now, you can also see more information here. So I can set this up so you can go back and forth between the two. You can see the original badges for this. And then there's more information. I actually found an Arts and Sciences handbook from 1989 and scanned it. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there. Okay. So officer details, that's those two pages right there. If you want to look at kingdom laws, I haven't got everything that's up on the kingdom website now because it all got moved, but everything while it was being published in the page and things like that. Grand Council, when there was a Grand Council, and there was actually an old document that showed the listing of SCA branches as of 1978. And that's kind of fun because it actually shows everything, I think. Although it's kind of hard to read because it's, old, printing and so on. But anyway, lots of the old documents, okay, historical documents, the last tournament. This was all about the first tournament of the SCA, okay, the first event. Okay, so that's Diana Listmaker's article. There's some stuff when Hillary of Serendip was the steward of the SCA, and she held that job for a long time. And during that time, she wrote a bunch of articles, which got published in TI. And there's a whole lot of these, and some of these are still interesting and useful today. So if you're looking for interesting things, and there's a bunch of other stuff, Kingdom Officer Meeting Minutes. There aren't a lot of those. There's some history on awards. Some of that information is in the award list, and there's actually more. Okay, so it breaks it down as to when they were first created. So if you come in here, you'll see that the first knighting was at the first event. Okay, and it talks briefly about that. And there's actually a link to the first event. Okay, I'm going to close that again. The Order of the Rose was created at the 12th night, where a whole bunch of stuff was created. You can see there's quite a few of those. And we can come all the way down to some of the more recent stuff, the scarves, which were just recently created. And again, there's some detail here, not a whole lot because there's not a lot of history there. Okay. But the idea is I also have the principalities, so you can look at the Miss Principality and look at when the period encampment was created, and so on. So again, the idea is to provide as much information in one place about the early days as possible. The historical documents actually, there's also the annotated history and so on. The silly side, well, the SCA has its silly side. And this includes quite a bit of fun stuff, including cartoons by Eric Foxworthy, and so on, that were published in the page. And I got everybody's permission for that kind of thing. So Koshka's cartoons, all kinds of stuff in here under the silly side. There's a description of the pandy bat, and as many people as could remember who won when. Newspaper articles. This was fun. I got a whole bunch of newspaper articles and magazine articles some time back, a few years ago, and spent a lot of time scanning stuff and putting these articles up here. Some of these are really kind of fascinating. They go all the way back to very early. You can see the dates. So What in the World, 1967. Okay. And this was, right there out of the Oakland Chronicle or something. I can't remember, but it actually talks about the SCA right in here. Okay, so it's a fascinating bunch of stuff in here. You could actually kind of get lost for days looking at some of this. There's some articles that I typed up, the articles from old mimeographed versions of TI, Tournaments Illuminated. There's newsletters. All the newsletters that I have been able to get hold of are in here. You can actually break it down, and if you come up to, say, 2023, you will find all of the pages up till October, which was just released a little while ago. Darkwood, I'm getting the Darkwood drum on a regular basis, the Winter's Gate Gatekeeper, whatever newsletters I have, okay? And so I try to get them up here as soon as possible. So if you don't feel like looking out on the SCA page, or there's a problem with the SCA page, it might actually be here. But there's a ton of stuff, and again, you can go back all the way to the beginning, and you can see no newsletters in 66, but if you go to 67, I think, we start seeing Tournaments Illuminated, which was actually at that point in 1967, Tournaments Illuminated was the SCA, and that's the whole West Kingdom. That's all it was, right? And these were all mimeographed, so that makes it fun. But they're all scanned for as many pages as they have. This one had 10 pages. Some of them were up into the 50 pages and so on. So there's a lot of stuff there. Some other miscellaneous. I added videos recently because there were a couple of buried videos. This one in particular is real popular with some people. It's from 1993, about half an hour. If you were around anywhere in that time, you'll recognize people in that video. And I've got a link to the West Kingdom YouTube channel just to make it easy to find that. And I just added traditions. Okay. There's only 10 items here because I've been going through and trying to find information that would be useful. So anyway, so I just wanted to give you kind of a quick overview there, just so that you know kind of how deep this site goes. There's a huge amount there. I haven't counted the number of photos, but it's well over 10,000 photos are up on this site, and probably a lot more than that. I'm going to do a quick login. Just come over to here and remember me, log in. Okay, so what's different here is it shows you your login, and I just automatically default the login to lowercase because it's just easier. But you can do the usual stuff with your login, change your password, manage your user ID. And you can do things with my photos, my arts and sciences projects. For me, that's going to be kind of big because this includes things that you've contributed as well as things that you're listed as the artist for. At least some of these do. I can go to my Scribble projects, which are definitely ones where I contributed them, so because I'm not a scribe, and all of that. So I'm going to leave that because I'm in and out of this site all the time. So for the most of the rest of what I want to do is I want to actually show you how to deal with creating a login and then working with the site as somebody who has an actual login. Okay, in order to do that, I decided rather than using the live site and then have to go clean up after myself, that I have this set up on my local machine with this is my test region. Okay, this is how I test everything that I do on the site. So it will show local host up here. That's because I'm running it here, not on the web itself. Looks exactly the same, or at least it should. Okay. The one thing that you will see as I go through stuff is that there are a lot of blank photos, because I didn't want to copy 10,000 photos over to the local server. Okay. But I want to show you a few things as somebody who is logged in. So the first thing I want to do is go to the who's who. Actually, before I do that, I wanted to actually deal with, I'm going to log out. Now, when you're logged out, you can log in or you can register, okay? Register will bring you to here. So you need to have the usual stuff that you would expect, a username, a password, an email address. But what's different here is that your SCA name needs to be hooked up, okay? So the idea is if I wanted, I can't create a second login for me, so I'm going to do something like Fred and just create something there. I'm not going to actually log in, so email fred@westkingdom.org, and then if I type Fred or Rick, okay, I can come into here and I can grab, say, Frederick Thurstone or whatever. And then because I've had an awful lot of Russian hackers trying to create logins on this site, I added this right here. I need you to tell me something about who you are. So just, I have been a member forever. I live in Canal. I don't remember where Frederick Thurston lives, but anyway, am a knight, etc. Okay, and then you can come in, and if you do the create ID, it sends me an email. You should get a copy of the email so that you know something actually happened, and all of that. And if there's a problem, like say Frederick Thurstone actually is hooked up to somebody else's login, it will actually state you can't do that, okay, because that person's already assigned. But the whole reason for doing this is that when you contribute to the site, it automatically hooks up some things. So if you upload some photos of scrolls, you would be the contributor of that scroll project or the photos for those scrolls, and it will automatically hook you up as a contributor, okay? And you don't have to actually do anything for that. So I'm going to step back out here, and then I'm going to log back in. Oh, actually, I am logged in. How come I'm still logged in? Oh, that's weird. Oh, let me refresh that screen. Okay, log in. And there's one of my cats. Okay, so I'm logged in. Now, once you're logged in, if you go to the Who's Who, one of the fun things is if you look at your own user, your own entry here, every page will have a Who's Who data request form. Notice that the photos aren't showing up and all that. Again, I don't have all that stored over here. But every page will have this Who's Who data request form. And when you click it, because you're logged in, it fills in as much information as it can from what's in the system. So how to pronounce the name, where I live, preferred titles, all of that stuff. So you can just fill in information or make changes and say, take this item out, whatever. You can add a blog or website link. You can put in household affiliations or take them out. You can deal with personal relationships or take them out. What I need, though, is to have you explain what you did, okay? Because this doesn't automatically transfer over. I have to actually update things, and that's intentional. Once upon a time, I had code that tried to do that, but it got ugly, and it just didn't work the way I wanted it to, and trying to figure out how to make it all work, it was problematic. There's a lot of text here explaining things. For example, under the personal relationships, if you're a student of somebody, this is meant to be legacy information. Now, some people disassociate themselves before they become a peer, and they don't want that link showing for whatever reason. That's okay. But if you want to keep that, it's actually useful for legacy information. So Rosario, for example, who just got laureled, will show that she was apprenticed to Ghislaine, and that shows up as legacy on her own Who's Who page. And so if you then look at that, you can actually click through to Ghislaine and see who else is apprenticed to Ghislaine, for example. So anyway, but there's a lot here, but a lot of this is explanation. So don't let that scare you, okay? If you're changing your SCA name, you can put that in here, that kind of thing. And what this does is it sends me an email, and again, you get a copy. I'm a firm believer in communication, okay? And when an email goes to me, I want you to see what was sent. So if there was a mistake or if you want to add more information, whatever, you've got a copy of what was sent. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that because that's a really useful tool. If you're not logged in or if you're looking at somebody else's Who's Who entry, so if I were to go to Sarah, for example, and I look at hers, if I then click this, because I'm not logged in as Sarah, it doesn't fill in anything. Okay. So only Sarah could have that happen for her. It has to be you who is logged in for that. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to show you that real quick. Again, mostly because this is the part that most people use the most is the Who's Who. Okay. So now we come down to here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to Miss Coronet, and what I did was I downloaded some of the photos that were up on the Miss Coronet event, and I'm going to actually upload them again here. So I'm going to go to Coronet Tournament. Okay, and this is what it looks like when you're logged in. Okay, down here you can post a comment. So I can state, the lightning was fun. Those of you who were there know what I'm talking about. Okay, and what this does is I have to actually approve any comments simply because when I was building this, I was super paranoid, and I set it up so that everything has to be affirmed by the administrator. Okay, but I'll show you what the page looks like after I do that. But I'm going to come to photos right here. So upload photos. Now this opens up a whole new window because the way the photo management works, it's easier to do it in its own screen. If you click to upload new photos, there's some tips. You can read information here. One thing that I'm really pleased with is this stuff right here. Autofill says I'm uploading a bunch of photos and I don't want to fill this in for every single one of those photos. Okay, so if I come into here and I do a browse, come on, browse. Oh, what are you doing? It's taking it a moment. Oh, it's probably waking up my hard drive. There we go. Yeah, my hard drive goes to sleep because it's a really big drive. West Kingdom history site, photos to be processed in class photos. Now, first thing I want to point out, see this file name right there? This is automatically generated by people's phones or by their cameras, or even if you're using a scanner, if you're scanning older photos. These tend to be automatically generated for you. My scanner says scan 01 or whatever, but it automatically increments the number. The problem with that is if somebody wants to tell me that how to correct somebody's link on a photograph, and we'll take a look at that. That is really hard to find when I'm looking at photos. So what I do is I tend to rename photos when I download them. So Rue Payne, who does a lot of photos for the history site, lets me just download her photos. So what I do is I name this MC for Miss Cornett, RP for Rue Payne, and then 001. There were actually a lot more photos than what's in here. If I want to upload, I can select a whole bunch of photos at one time. Okay. Now I can select a maximum of 20. So I just want to point this out. I can do 20 photos at one batch. Okay, and that's a problem with the server. Okay, the reason that this is happening is that DreamHost, who is our server, our ISP, limits the number of photos that can be uploaded in one shot because they deal with a lot of people doing illegal activities on a free server like DreamHost. Okay, I'm not sure how they actually make money. I don't pay attention to that, but they have the free services and then they have the not free services. But the free servers, they often have people doing a lot of illegal things, and so they limit you how much you can do at any one time. But the nice thing is, if I want to upload, and I'm just going to go through to here, okay, I'm going to take the first 20 photos and I'm going to do this. And it tells me 20 were selected. If I selected 21, it would tell me 21 were selected, but when I upload, it would only upload the first 20, okay? I can then state Rue, that's not right, Rue Payne, or Rue Payne, and when I select that, it fills it in, okay? If their name is not in the who's who, okay, that's okay. You can put a name in here, but Rue is in here. And I don't want to put a caption on this batch of photos. I'm going to come back to that in a moment because there are all different things going on. When I click on upload files, it uploads the files, okay? Now, here's the fun thing. What a lot of people end up doing, and I want to go through this process for just one photo, is you can tag people, and this puts them into people's who's who pages. So for example, we have Princess Audrey and Prince Roland right there. I'm going to tag them in this photo by clicking here. I'm going to go Audrey, and there's Audrey of Foxhaven, save, and there's Roland, and that's Roland, go all the way down to von Steinhaus right there, and click save. Okay, now I could try to get everybody in this photo, but most of the faces are obscured, so I'm not going to try. But anyway, but the idea is you can tag as many people as you need to, or as many people as you feel, would be useful here. And then I can come in here and do some sort of a caption for this photo. So I'm going to go lining up for procession into court. And then I can come down here and go Princess Audrey and Prince Roland of the Mists. Okay, and their entourage. Okay, you can get fancier. You can put this basically allows you to put as much text as you need to. Okay, so once I've done that and I click on save, It tells me this, and then it updates. So the tags are now showing up here, and then down here, the text and so on. Now, you can't authorize the photo, but it tells you if the photo has already been authorized. And this, again, is because when I was putting this together, I was worried about people doing dumb things, posting porn or whatever. I didn't want to deal with that. So I should be more trusting, but there you go. Now, notice that there's no contributor listed in here. That's because it automatically puts me in as a contributor because I'm the one who uploaded the photos. Okay, so it's not showing up here. When you go to the actual event page, it will actually show up with my name as a contributor and Rue as the photographer. Okay, then you can come down and do this again. What I wanted to show you is this text right here. Oh, it shows the contributor right there. I forgot I had done that. It's right there. Okay, been a while since I've looked at it from this point of view. But there's an important note here that says tagging people here does not display the names anywhere. And the reason I mention that is I've had people come in and they put the tags in and then they leave everything blank down here. So the problem is this information is not actually displayed anywhere when you look at the photos. It's used to link the photo to people's who's who. Does that make sense to people? I can't really see faces for a lot of people, so I'm just, but anyway, that's what's going on there. So I just wanted to point that out, okay? And I could come in and do this for all the photos. I'm not going to because it would take a long time, but I wanted to go through that process just to show you, okay? So there's all of that. So I'm going to close this window. Oops, not that window, this window. Okay, and there we have that. Now, again, you're not going to see the photos right away, but if I come over, see, I have the admin page over here on localhost. If I refresh this page, it shows me there's one event with 20 photos, okay, and there's one comment down here, okay. So if I come over to comments, I can look at that, and as the administrator, I can go, okay, yeah, comments right there. And if there's a whole bunch of different people with comments, I could do an authorize all. I can also just do one individual one and so on, okay. So there's that. I can also do the same type of thing with the photos, okay? If I come over to here, it shows me the photos. If I need to, I can come in and fix anything. I can tag more people. I can do whatever I need to do. I can put more text in. I can correct spelling, whatever. But I can also authorize all. Okay, once I've done the authorize, and I come back to the event, if I refresh the page, oh, there's a problem. Oh, that's been wow, I'm going to have to look at that. Okay, I need to look at something in the code. Problem is the PHP people, the programming language I'm using, deprecated some things. So that's an interesting one. Anyway, I will look at that later. You shouldn't normally see that error message. If you click on the photo, you get the error, and there you get all this stuff, okay? And notice that nowhere does it show the tag, but it shows the description that I put in, okay? Another nice feature is that if you want to get a closer look at the photo, you can do this, and then inside your browser, you can click on the photo, and it will actually give you a larger version of the photo. You can click on it again to do that. And I'm going to go back to there. And I can again scroll from photo to photo. Okay, so wow, that just is annoying. Okay, here I thought I had everything bug-free, so there you go. Never bug-free. And my screen just did something. Come here. Okay, so when I put the comment in, this was the comment. The nice thing about the comments, if there's already a comment in here, I could then reply to that, or somebody else could reply to that comment. And you can have a little weird conversation, but it would have an intervening point where I had to, deal with it from the admin side. You can also add, files if you needed to. If you found an event flyer, for example, for this event, you could actually upload that and put a file description in. And if you wanted to put a link to another website here, you could do that. So if you had a video from the finals or something, you could put that in. You would want to put a description and then a longer description. And then you could upload it. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with all of that. Okay, so there's that. Okay, So now I've done that. I'm going to now do, unless there are any questions, I have not been waiting for people to ask questions because I've just been barreling along. I apologize. I tend to do that. Does anybody have any questions so far? You can do a raise hand, or you can do something in chat or something. And I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to hope that that means that everybody's, oh, there's something in chat right there. Okay. That's a good question. You can email me. Yeah, Rosie, on your question about about projects, I was actually going to upload a Scribble project just to give you a feel. So that should hopefully show you. It's actually very similar, but it doesn't allow you to tag individual people in it. So, but other than that, it's very, very similar. Okay. So yeah, so basically the question about if you can't remember if you have a login, I know some people have created logins and then not used them. So yeah, you can always email me if nothing else. There's the contact us right here. Contact us, site issues or concerns is probably the simplest one. Okay, so I'm going to go to Scribble Arts, and I just chose Scribble because that one's a little more complicated in some aspects. And I've got I've got a few photos for one scroll that Carrick did, and I want to do that one. Okay, so I'm going to view update. So when you're logged in as a user, view update my Scribble projects allows you to come over to here, and when you do that, it then says add new project. So you can then do a project here. So I'm listed as a contributor for a whole bunch of stuff right there, because when I first built the site, there you go, right? So add new project. And when you click on that, notice that there are tabs here, but only one of them is active. These others are not active until you save what's on this page. So the question about what happens to the history site if something happens to you, that's a question, and that's a good one, and that's a whole other discussion, and we can talk about that briefly after we're done with this other stuff. But yeah, it's a good point, and believe me, I'm well aware. Okay, so project name. So this is a Scribble project, and this happens to be, God, what was that? I can't remember now. I downloaded this so I could look at it. Okay. Let's see. Wow, I'm doing really good here. Wow, okay. Greatly interested around her word of arm scroll. Okay. I couldn't remember. Okay. So I'm going to go with the project over here. I'm going to state Aurelia de Montfort, a word of arms scroll. Okay. So a title that actually means something for what the project is. And then I'm going to tell it that it's in a word of arms scroll. The date completed is not required. You could, if you just finished this project, you could put the date in and so on. Notice that the contributor is automatically filled in. And for this, I'm just going to state Carrick did this, not Hirsch. Not Hirsch. Okay. Yep. Okay. And then I'm going to note that, again, authorized. You can't authorize it. I have to authorize it. But anyway, I'm going to do a save. Once it's saved, notice that these other tabs are now got a light blue rather than a gray background or no background. I can't remember. If you click on artists, you can select who the calligrapher was. And in this case, I believe Carrick did both of these. You can have multiple calligraphers, so if more than one person worked on this project, since Aldith is Laurel, I'll do that just to, okay. You can have multiple artists in here. You can do the same thing for the illuminator. Okay, you can also go, oops, that was the wrong person. If you click on it, it fills that in. You can change the name. You can delete it. You can add new. You can do all of that. You can add keywords, and the keywords here are the same ones that were in that list earlier. So we could go to that one and go to, I honestly don't know. I'm just going to grab that. But you have to save those, okay? And then if you wanted to, if you had documentation, you could put documentation, okay? So you had a PDF or whatever, you could upload a PDF of your own documentation. It could be a Word or a document file or a docx file. You can do web links if you actually have more information on your own website. So again, the idea is to make this as flexible as possible, okay? And then the photos themselves. For the photos, you can click on Manage Photos. Notice that I added this note in here because trying to do some of this on a phone or an iPad might work, but on a phone is kind of a small screen. You could try it, but I don't recommend it. And the same tips here that are on the other one for the events. From here, I can then select under Scribble. Now, one of my recommendations, and I don't see the one I was, okay, is to put the finished version of the scroll first. So I think that one's probably the finished one. I could be wrong. Yeah, it looks like, or it's one of the other. Anyway, but I'm just going to assume that one's the finished version for the moment. And I will upload that one just by itself. I'm going to call Carrick the photographer as well. And I'm just going to fill in this, yeah. And I'm going to copy this text. I'm a firm believer in copy and paste. Okay, so this is going to be the first photo for this particular item. And notice that you can change the sequence of the photos. So you can actually decide that, oops, that should not have been the first photo. I can change it, you know, that kind of thing. And then you can put in as much detail as you want to about this particular photo. Okay. And then I can go back and I can upload all the other photos. So everything except for that one. So I can do there and there. So what I'm doing here on Windows, I can click on the first one, hold the Shift key, click here, and it will select everything in between. Then holding Control, I can select just that one photo. If I had accidentally selected that one as well, I could hold the Control key and click on it, and it would unselect it. Okay, just a little nice trick. I don't know. I haven't used a Mac in so many years, I couldn't tell you if that works the same on the Mac, but I would assume it's something similar. I'm going to click on Open, and then I'm going to, down here, click on, let's see, I'm going to do the same thing here, Carrick. And then I'm going to come down here, and once again, I'm going to paste that information. Now, the useful thing about pasting this and having this is that every photo in that group of photos I just uploaded will all have that information, so I don't have to fill it in for each photo. That's what it means by autofill, okay? So when I click on Upload, and I scroll down, here's the next photo, and it's filled in this information. And from here, I can state this is the line drawing. And then save that text. You have to save each photo individually because, you know, it kind of makes sense in a lot of ways, I hope. And then you can make whatever changes, and as you go, there's more photos. I do it 5 at a time just so that you're not having to scroll through huge quantities of photos to find one. Okay. And you can go, you know, down to here, and there's a close-up of some of the finished work and so on. So you can do all of that. Now, the other thing I wanted to show was what that looks like on the other end. So when you list Scribble projects, I could then go to Carrick right there, set filter, and it's not showing because I have not, as the administrator, approved this. So I need to go over to the administrator screen. And when I refresh that, it shows that there's a Scribble project that needs approval and Scribble photos that need approval. Okay, So if I do not authorized, notice that both of those, because it's the same scroll, okay, come into, just click on one of those. It doesn't really matter. And then I can come down here and authorize the project. Now, when I authorize the project, it doesn't automatically authorize the photos, okay? So I can then do the photos and authorize all, okay? So close that, close that, close that. Okay, if I do that, it shows there's nothing needing my attention. Okay, so if I then set the filter again, there's Aurelia Word of Arms. When I click on that to view it, it shows as much detail as was given up in here. And again, there's that issue. Wow, I'm going to have to fix that one. I'm going to have to go through every single one of these and deal with that. Well, normally there's some sort of description. I think it's in the description. So, or the caption. Wow, that's just really weird. Kind of annoying, actually. As the programmer, it's really annoying. I'm going to have to look at all of those. Ugh. Nobody has said anything, so I haven't seen that. Okay, so anyway, but the nice thing is, again, you can click on the individual photos, bring them up. You can see whatever description there is. You can scroll back and forth. Okay, this is the early line drawing and whatever. You can see that by clicking here. You can open it in a new window and see a larger version of the same photo, and so on. I just remembered there was something I forgot to do on the event. That figures. Okay, so far so good? Okay? I'm going to close down this stuff right here. And what I wanted to do, and I actually forgot to do this under these photos, is I actually have a peerage ceremony in here. I have some photos for a peerage ceremony. I want to show you a way to deal with the peerage ceremonies. Ah, thank you. Okay, so I want to go back to here. Okay, go back to that same event, Miss Coronet, September, this one right here. Notice that it shows me that there's actually a comment for this as well. And I'm going to come into that upload photos. And what I want to do is show you for a peerage, one thing that's really useful to do is if I come in here and I go back to the photos here, class photos, and I'm going to, let's see, they start right there. I've got part of Daoud's Pelican ceremony. Okay, and this again is Rue Payne. Oh. I think it depends on how you think more than anything else. I've got a couple of people who have done. Can everybody see the question? I think you should be able to. But Rosie is asking, what is the best structural process for projects such as pottery of a certain location and time period? Do we do one project with all the different images, or would you recommend we submit each object individually? I really think that for most people, it depends on how you think, but since the who's who is kind of a resume of things that you have done, doing each individual project as its own project, so each individual item, then if you have multiple photos of one item, they would all be, that project would be about that one item, and you could then have as many, as you wanted to. And you can have as many projects listed on your as you want to put up there. If you look at my who's who listing, there's a lot of stuff there. Because there's a lot of jewelry that I did over the years, plus the Golden Stack players. So there's a lot of stuff there. There's no limit to how much you can put up. So yeah, there you go. Excellent. Okay. So what I want to note here is Pelicans there. And that's actually there because I actually did upload these at one time. But Pelican ceremony for Daoud Ibn Ali. Okay, and the idea is by doing that, every photo that is part of Daoud's Pelican ceremony has the same caption. Okay, then if I upload the files, and I then go to those pages, which would be down in here. Okay. Okay, there. Almost getting there. Oh, there we are. Okay. Yeah. So here we are just by coincidence, okay, just the way this laid out. Now, from here, I could then tag everybody. But the one thing that is very important for the peerage ceremony is that for every photo, and I don't have a way, I haven't set this up. I may try to do this at some point, but it's, I don't want to break anything. But I want to make sure that for Daoud's pelican ceremony, that Daoud is always listed. Now, notice that I didn't put the apostrophe in. That's because there are problems with apostrophes in names. So, but if I then click on save, it puts the name down here and it shows it with the apostrophe in there. And I could then put in Mercy, and she's right there, and so on. But the idea is for every photo, even if Daoud is not showing in the photo, and the reason for that is this will then show all of the photos for Daoud's pelican ceremony on Daoud's Who's Who page, which is really kind of a nice feature for Daoud. Okay, if I refresh the tags, it shows you that. And then I can come in here and describe who's in the photo and do the usual stuff. But notice that every one of these says pelican ceremony. If I go to the live site, I'm going to go actually out to the live version of the site and down to, oops, I wanted to go to the Who's Who, and I look for Daoud. If I scroll down on his photos down here, he's got a lot of photos because he's been a busy guy. There's his knighting. But if I come down to the most recent photos, way down here, okay, we've got the pelican ceremony. And all of the photos, whether he's in them or not, for his pelican ceremony are showing up so that he can see all of them without having to go to the event itself to see all the photos. And it's just it's a nice little touch for people to have all of that in one place. So if you do remember, if not, I usually, when I do the approval process, I sometimes add more tags and so on. But still, it's kind of a nice little feature. So those are the major things. Let's see. Okay. All right, so a couple of other just odds and ends, miscellaneous people. So when you come down into photos for the Who's Who, there is no place to do what is called miscellaneous photos. Basically, the reason for that is that can get a little weird, and most people have some idea what event the photos were taken at. But a really good example, I'm going to go to Carol and Bellatrix, and I can just do that. There are a lot of photos for Carol that nobody knows what the event was. She was all over the place in the early days. And so there's this huge section of miscellaneous people photos and other people that are in these photos. So for example, Paul will be tagged in there. And these guys, nobody knew who they were when I posted that. So I'm sure somebody knows who they are. But anyway, but the idea is that all of these then can be up on the site without being required that they be attached to a specific event. Simply because sometimes you don't know. I mean, especially if you've got old photos, you may not know what event it was. Okay, the way that those get to me, probably email. Email is the safest way. Scan them, get them to me. I'll deal with them. I'm usually pretty fast about getting stuff up on the site. So wanted to make sure I discussed that. Arts and Sciences projects. Okay, I have a whole bunch of notes. I just wanted to make sure. I did want to briefly look at the way that Bardic Arts looks like when you try to deal with it. Partially because, again, everything is different. So if I go into View Mine, there's only one item in there that I actually was part of. But this one's a little different. You have to have a title. A subtitle is optional. And again, the date written is optional and so on, the primary artist. The actual Bardic piece goes in here, and then you can have notes. I often add notes if I pull something out of the page. So, for example, if Bercy had written something and it was in the page, I will have grabbed it and I will note this was taken from this issue of the page, and so on, and that information will be in here, and any other notes that might be associated. You might want to, if I entered this in the Miss Bardic competition, This was my period piece or whatever. And again, this works the same. You have to actually save the main page before you can do anything else over here. Okay, so just kind of wanted to make sure I had covered that. The other thing is there are some Bardic pieces that have very specific and unusual layout. If you're not familiar with doing that kind of thing in HTML, which is what this editor in here, oops, I'll just do this, but this editor in here actually works with HTML. If I click on this, it shows me all the HTML tags. If you're not used to working with HTML, if you can scan the document to show me what the actual format is, I can use HTML tables or something and make it look as close as possible to that interesting layout. And some of those are based on period forms. I'm not trying to make any statements about style or anything else. People sometimes do something where you've got a line and then a line that's offset and things like that. And those can get tricky to get to look the way you want them to. So, okay. So there's that. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss anything important. Okay, now the other thing is there's a lot of other stuff on the site, which I showed you briefly at the beginning. If you have newsletters that are not up in the newsletter part of the site, the easiest thing to do again is send them to me. If you can scan them to PDF and send them to me, that would be great. If you're not comfortable with scanning things, I can make arrangements with you if you're willing to let them out of your hands. Some people want to get them out of their house. Some people want to have them back. Okay, I'm willing to work with you and make arrangements to do a handoff and then get them back to you. I can deal with having them sent to me via email, or not email, through regular postal mail if you want to trust the postal service or UPS or whatever service, and so on. I'm willing to work with people to get documents that are useful for the history site. So anything that falls in any of this stuff, historical documents, newspaper articles that aren't already up here, newsletters again. I really like the idea of having the newsletters because there's a lot of information that shows up in old newsletters that isn't anywhere else, including the page. And so I found in some cases from Owertha with Kevron gathering up all of the newsletters that he can get his hands on, I've actually added things into the awards list because there were awards that I didn't have in the awards list already from the newsletters. And so there's a lot of different ways that people can contribute to the site. And if you don't see a way from one of these other pages, sometimes I have links. So if you go to the traditions, I have an email link right here. I haven't done that everywhere on the site, but you can always email me from here. And you can then state, I have this stuff, let's talk about it, and we can work it out, okay? So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover, I think. Yeah, that's everything I really wanted to cover. So I'm going to leave it open to questions now. So anybody? It's all making sense? Everybody happy? Feel like you can contribute? I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff. I really am. I'm always I troll in my own weird ways. I don't troll as often as I used to, but I really want to encourage more contributions, especially from the smaller groups, the more outlying groups. We get very little out of the Far West, so I always try to jump on stuff when we get it. Owertha, in the recent past, hasn't been too bad, but the older stuff, there's not a whole lot. But that same goes for a lot of the early West Kingdom stuff. There's a period where there's a bunch of photos, and there's a period where there's not much. So, excellent. So I'm looking forward, like I stated, to seeing stuff. And hopefully I'll start seeing stuff soon. And encourage other people. Sarah is recording this, and so it will be available soon on the Kingdom YouTube page, and I will also probably put it up on the video page on the history site as well. I'll put a link to it or whatever on the page here, just as a helpful, way to see this information. You can't hear anything. I'm not sure what I can do about that. The only thing I can figure is that it's a volume issue on your end. I'm, without standing over your shoulder.
I mean, the good news is it's recorded. So there is video evidence of all the things. So
Yeah.
At least it'll be up there.
Yeah, so that's the goal. And so anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming out and showing interest in helping with the history site, the West Kingdom history. Well, there's a bunch of information up there. If you go up to the about, it actually tells you the basics of where this all started and how I got to where it's at now. But it's been a fun project, and I'm looking forward to it. Nora asked the question about what happens if something happens to me. Well, that's been a concern for both this and the history site, for the Herald's website and the awards list and all of that. I think a lot of people are afraid of volunteering because they're worried that they will need to code. With any luck, I'll be around for a while, but there are people who can code who might be able to help, although of course individual programming languages have their own quirks, and anybody who is a programmer knows that. The idea is, it would be nice to have some people willing to step in and help with all of this. And every time I've had somebody who volunteered to be an administrator for the history site, they end up not doing anything. It's like, okay. So I try. I'm not going to name any names, but because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But anyway, but I do want to encourage anybody who's interested to please reach out. Being the administrator doesn't mean you have to do everything that I do every day. I'm always playing with stuff. I'm always, somebody will say, "Wouldn't it be cool if?" And then I stop and I think about it, that kind of thing. So, the whole bit with the new traditions page was based off of some recent conversations on Facebook, and so on. So, but that's stuff that you don't have to worry about. Adding more content, on the other hand, that's another story. Helping with the content, that would be useful. I end up with a lot of people like Rue. I go out and I download her photos from Facebook. Same thing for Ghislaine. I end up downloading her photos from Facebook. If more people could upload their photos directly, it would save me a lot of work, because then I'm not downloading them and then re-uploading them, that kind of thing. So, like I state, the more people who can contribute, and if you someday feel like you might want to help as an administrator for the site, please talk to me. I certainly would appreciate having some more people able to step in and help with all that. Okay, so there we are. Any other questions? That's my pleasure. Like I say, this is really thank you. This has really been a labor of love for me. The SCA has been a major part of my life since 1977, and this is a way of giving back. So that's why I put so much effort into it. Is that it's a way for me to contribute back to the SCA in a way that most people can't. And so this really, when I say it's my pleasure, it really is. I enjoy doing this. There are days I get a little frustrated, but that's any project of any size. There's going to be days of frustration. But overall, this is just something I'm really pleased with. I'm proud of how well it works. This is all my own code. Some of it's based on other things, but it was a big learning project for me as I built this. And that was good all on its own. And a lot of this is keeping me active. It's keeping my brain active. So that's not a bad thing. So there we go. And I'm rambling. So
If you don't mind, Hirsch, I will let everybody know the next class. I don't have a date yet, but it's going to be on feast etiquette as we head into feast season. It's kind of important to know, like, don't pile everything on your food or on your plate if you're in the front of the line. And it's going to come via Knight, who's also a Pell, and their partner, who's a Pell Laurel.
Excellent.
So it should be Eric Firediver and Signy from up in Ravenshore.
Oh,
So they'll
fun.
be talking a lot about the types of etiquette that we do for feasts.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And there will be, of course, more classes down the line because Sarah's
Yeah.
doing a great job with all this. So there
If
we
you have a suggestion, tell me, because I'm into like March of next year and I'm running out of ideas.
Yeah, weird, Luigi. Some Vikings actually understand etiquette.
Hey, he's the good half, right? He's the good half of that Viking. So
Okay. Well,
have
thank you, everybody.
and
I mean,
have a great
honestly,
night.
yeah. Take care. You'll see you online and see some of you at Crown.
Yay. Thank you.